Perseverance pays off. You just got to keep at it. These wise words that my Grandma Donna once said to me came to me as I recently read about a woman named Wilma Rudolph. Wilma was born into a large family, the 20th out of 22 children, in Clarksville, Tennessee in 1940. Perseverance was definitely a word that Wilma Rudolph folded up tight and kept close to her heart at all times. Throughout many struggles, she fought, and in doing so, achieved amazing goals. She suffered from a debilitating disease, but through the help of her family, she overcame it. She endured years of disappointment, but through her strength of spirit and work ethic, she persevered through it. And she risked rejection to fight against segregation, and by taking risks, she helped to change it. Wilma's story, I've learned, is not in its essence only hers. I've seen it throughout my time at Northfield. To achieve a worthy goal, one often needs help from those who care. By the time Wilma was 4, she had already suffered from the chicken pox, measles, whooping cough, mumps, scarlet fever, and pneumonia. But the worst disease that she endured was polio, a highly contagious infectious disease that could strike at any age, but which most often infected children. In the 1940s, polio had struck over 175,000 people. Those with paralytic polio, the worst form of the disease, experienced tremors, muscle weakness, fever, stiffness, muscle pain, and spasms, difficulty swallowing, and often paralysis of the arms and or legs that leads to deformation of those limbs. Wilma had paralytic polio. By the time she was 4, it became obvious that her left leg was deformed. It was crooked, and her left foot turned inward. She couldn't walk without a brace, which she began wearing at 5 years old. For Wilma, this was, to say the least, a hard obstacle to deal with. She wanted more than anything to be normal again. She wanted to run with her sisters and her brothers. As Maureen Smith puts it in her book, Wilma Rudolph, a biography, she wanted to be, quote, accepted by other children her age, something that was priceless to the young girl, end quote. Wilma's family played a crucial role in helping her to achieve her goal. When she was 6, it became clear that her home exercises were not helping her leg heal. She needed physical therapy, but could not receive help from the hospital in Clarksville because of the segregation practices in the South. Although her family was poor, her mother began taking her by bus to Meharry Hospital, the Black Medical College of Fisk University in Nashville, which was 50 miles away. Bus stations and buses were also segregated, which meant that Wilma and her mother had to sit in the back of the bus. She could only use the bathrooms that were for black people, even though they were not as nicely accommodated as those for white people. Wilma and her mother also could have been refused service at any restaurant because of their skin color. This, of course, was hard on Wilma's mother, as well as Wilma, but she was dedicated to help her daughter recover. At Meharry Hospital, Wilma's leg was, quote, stretched, pulled, and twisted, end quote. The doctors recommended a rigorous course of heat and water therapy, along with therapeutic massages. Wilma definitely needed the help of her family. After a long bus ride home, Wilma's mother and brothers and sisters would set up their own physical therapy station in their house, massaging Wilma's leg at least 4 times a day. Wilma was not able to do any household chores. Her brothers and sisters took care of that for her. Because of the paralysis, Wilma had missed kindergarten and 1st grade. When she was 7, she was able to start walking again, with a brace on her left leg, and thus able to go to school. Although this was an accomplishment, the other children teased her, calling her a cripple, and never included her in the activities. Her brothers and sisters stood in defense for her. By the time she was 10, all of Wilma's and her family's hard work had paid off. She no longer had to go to physical therapy 50 miles away. And by the time she was 12, Wilma Rudolph, future Olympic gold medalist in track and field, the first woman and the first black woman to receive 3 gold medals in one Olympics, could walk normally, without the aid of crutches, the leg brace, or corrective shoes. Wilma was ready and able to pursue her dreams. This truth that one often needs help from those who care to achieve worthy goals has been evident in my time at Northfield. I've seen it on one of my dad's bookshelves in his classroom. There, next to Company H by Sam Watkins, is a diary of John Ransom, a Union soldier who was captured in Tennessee and then taken to the infamous Confederate prison in Andersonville, Georgia. Ransom was very ill and couldn't walk because of malnutrition and because of the beatings he received while at Andersonville. But he had a goal: to get back to Michigan and to get back to his family. On September 6, 1864, that goal seemed in sight. Ransom wrote, quote, "Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah, good news," end quote. He was referring to the fact that the prison authorities were allowing the sick to receive treatment at a hospital. But he quickly learned that this news did not apply to him, because the prison authorities said, quote, "All who cannot walk must stay behind," end quote. Ransom knew that if left behind, he shall die in 24 hours. This was when someone who cared stepped in. Like Wilma's mother helped Wilma, a man named Batiste, an Indian who was a fellow prisoner, wanted to help Ransom. When the men heard the car whistle, Batiste carried Ransom to the gate and set him up in the middle of the soldiers as well as he could. Then, as Ransom recounts, quote, the adjutant yelled out, "Here, here, hold on, that man can't go." And he tried to stop us, but my noble Indian friend kept straight ahead, howling, "He all right, he well, he go," end quote. Ransom survived Andersonville and was moved to a different prison camp and was released a few months later. Thanks to Batiste, Ransom survived and was able to embrace his family again. He could have not endured by himself. When Joy Snyder fell to the court at the game at sunrise, she could not get up by herself. My dad and Coach Hetherington helped her, not knowing what had happened. Later, we learned that Joy had torn her ACL. This injury, to me as a basketball player, is one of the most feared of all. Joy needed surgery and had to spend 4 weeks without using her left leg. She would have to endure a great deal of discomfort. She, like Wilma Rudolph and John Ransom, would need the help from people who cared. I remember right after her surgery, my dad went to the hospital. Mr. Elder was already there, smiling and holding her hand. The times I went over to Joy's house to see her, it wasn't unusual for me to see cards and flowers and gifts from people who had visited her to encourage her. Her mom and dad helped her when she needed something to eat or drink, or needed to take her medicine, or needed the eyes on her knee replaced. When Joy came back to school, the help did not end, for in this place there are so many people who care about her. If someone were to stand by the stairs when Joy was walking up or down, he or she would see Anna or Susan or a teacher or me. Everyone helps her out and encourages her. Help from others is important in achieving a worthy goal, but one must also challenge oneself. By the time Wilma Rudolph entered middle and high school, she had decided that she would follow in her older sister's footsteps and try out for the girls' basketball team. Wilma had found a love for basketball, and she wanted to excel, but she was not good enough. Smith writes that, quote, Coach Clinton Gray kept young Wilma on the team, but she sat on the bench the entire season, unquote. During this time, Wilma challenged herself. She learned a lot about the game as she studied the movement of all the players. The next year, when Wilma was in 8th grade, she tried out for the basketball team again. For the second year in a row, she sat on the bench. The next year, she tried out for a third time. She believed she had paid her dues in basketball that season, sitting on the bench for 2 years and practicing each summer. And her challenging herself paid off somewhat. She made it to the court on occasion, but spent the majority of the games on the bench. That summer, Wilma took her self-challenge to another level. She resolved to become a starter on the basketball team and practiced with a determination that impressed her coach. She and teammate Nancy Bowen had convinced Coach Gray to let them practice in the gym. The girls would shoot, dribble, and oftentimes play against boys until Coach Gray would kick them all out of the gym. Wilma then included 2 more teammates in her preseason preparations, Delma and Ruth. Their extra practicing paid off when, on the first night of the season, Wilma and her 3 friends started their first game for Burt High as 10th graders and began to make their mark on the world of Tennessee girls basketball. That year, Wilma scored 803 points in 25 games, which was a new state record for a girls basketball team player. Her team made it to the state championship that year as well, in part because Wilma Rudolph challenged herself. Her efforts also yielded amazing results she could not have foreseen. While playing basketball in high school, she was spotted by the Tennessee State University track coach, Ed Temple, who had asked her to come to her summer track camp. She accepted. This led to a scholarship to run track at Tennessee State. Her second year on the team was the year that Wilma went to the Olympics and won 3 gold medals. That truth about challenging oneself is all around us here at Northfield. I've seen it in the face of Abraham Lincoln in a book about him in my dad's classroom. When Lincoln became president in 1861, he faced the possibility that the country would split in two. There was incredible tension between the North and the South. Lincoln could have done similar to what his predecessors had done, nothing. Lincoln decided to do something different. He decided to challenge himself, to fight for the protection of the Union and against slavery. Look at a picture of Lincoln taken before his presidency and one taken after. The challenges line his face. Where once was smooth skin, now are dark lines. Where once were young, sharp eyes, now were eyes darkened with struggles. Lincoln went above and beyond to do his best for his country. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation freeing slaves. Lincoln led the Union to victory, keeping the United States united. And I've seen the desire to challenge myself in the eyes of Alexandra Berkson in the book O Pioneers by Willa Cather. In the 1880s in Hanover, Nebraska, living off the land was a challenging task. Alexandra and her brothers, Oscar and Lou, experienced the death of their father, and because Alexandra had shown herself to be the most responsible child, she inherits the responsibilities of taking care of the farm and her brothers. When a drought hits, the easiest thing to do would have been for Alexandra to sell her land and move away. Alexandra decides to do something different. She decides to challenge herself. She keeps her land and decides to purchase more. She consults her neighbors and works hard to find unorthodox ways to profit from the land. And profit she does. A profit that is not only financial. Near the end of the book, talking to her friend Carl, as, quote, the sun was dropping low in the west, end quote, and, quote, 12 young colts were galloping in a drove over the brow of the hill, end quote, Alexandra says that she is one of the people who have come to love the land and understand it. And I've seen the importance of challenging oneself in the work of Anna Hetherington. Recently, in AP Biology, the class was given the assignment to complete a take-home test on cell membranes. The students were able to use notes in their book to write a report, and they were allowed to illustrate their explanations with drawings if they chose to do so. The easiest thing to do would have been to give a brief explanation of the information. Anna chose something different. She decided to challenge herself. She wanted to learn. She wanted to catch all the detail that she could. When the day arrived for the assignments to be turned in, her fellow classmates were all amazed by all the work she had put in. She had covered all of the material. She had many hand-drawn pictures depicting the information in the chapter. For several of the drawings, she presented a large-scale example, then offered another, focusing on a small section of the big picture, only magnified, with even more detail. For each of these drawings, she devoted a page to the defining of her terms and to vivid descriptions of how the particular part works. All of this work, totaling 13 pages of pictures and explanations, shows us that Anna decided to go above and beyond. She decided to challenge herself to have a better understanding. Along with receiving help from others and challenging oneself to achieve a goal, one often must also take a risk. Wilma knew this truth. She fought for desegregation, and doing so in the 1950s and 1960s meant risking one's life. Ruby Bridges, a 6-year-old black girl in 1960, had to be escorted into school by federal marshals in order to protect her from the violence of protesters. That same year, after Wilma won 3 gold medals in the Olympics, her hometown prepared a huge parade to honor her. At that time, Clarksville, a town of 40,000 people, was still segregated. In fact, the governor who was in charge of the event had run for office on a segregationist platform. Wilma told the governor that she would not participate in a parade unless the event was integrated. He accepted her terms. Therefore, Wilma's Victory Parade was the first integrated event held in her hometown of Clarksville. It was, in fact, the first time blacks and whites in Clarksville had organized an event together. For 2 miles, black and white people lined the streets together for the first time. The celebration banquet that was held that evening for Wilma was also integrated. Judge Hudson, a white man, spoke to that crowd of about 1,000 people, saying, quote, "You can play very nice music on a piano by playing only the black keys on it, and you can play very nice music on the same piano by playing only the white keys on it. But ladies and gentlemen, the absolute best music comes out of that piano when you play both the black keys and the white keys together." End quote. Wilma went on to participate in protests in the city until the segregation laws were struck down. By taking a risk, she helped to change the world. I found that truth in capstone government as well. When we learned about the executive branch, examining each president and assessing his work. When we discussed Jefferson, we learned a lesson about risk. He, along with many others in the 13 colonies, felt they were being treated unfairly by King George III. Men gathered from all the colonies to figure out a solution to their problem. Their goal was to separate and become an independent country. The Continental Congress appointed Jefferson to compose the Declaration of Independence. After writing this document with the help of others, it was sent to King George III. The risk that Jefferson took in drafting and signing this document was immense. To question the king's authority was a great risk for those under his rule, but to draft a document stating what he has done wrong and then declaring separation was to be considered a traitor, for which the penalty was death. We still benefit from Jefferson's risk today. And I found the value of taking a meaningful risk in the actions of Atticus Finch in the book To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The Finch family lived in Macomb, Alabama during the time of the Great Depression. Atticus, a lawyer in town, is given the job of defending Tom Robinson, a black man falsely accused of hurting a white woman. Nearly everyone in town believes that Robinson is guilty, regardless of the facts. They believe that an accused black man is always wrong. Atticus knows Tom is innocent and defends him rigorously. This makes him an outcast. But he does not let others' opinions sway him. Leading up to the trial, Atticus's children, Jim and Jean Louise, endure other kids making fun of them. Mrs. DeVos, an elderly neighbor, also says harsh remarks to them about their father's actions. Atticus as well endures hateful comments. Despite all of the controversy and vitriol, on the day of the trial, Atticus stands up and defends Tom Robinson to the best of his capability. Although Robinson is unjustly found guilty, Atticus shows his children and the others of the town what it means to have integrity and help others to see Robinson as an equal. Throughout your time here at Northfield, you will encounter hurdles, but those hurdles can be hurdled by setting goals, and those goals can be achieved through the help of those who care. And with the help from those who care, you can challenge yourself to go above and beyond, and when challenging yourself, you will often take meaningful risks, and the result of such risks is to conquer those hurdles and win the race. When setbacks step in front of you, seemingly stopping you from moving forward, just as polio stood in front of Wilma, persevere. When goals seem impossible to achieve, just as Wilma's goal to play basketball seemed, persevere. When a noble fight means you must take an unpopular stand, just as Wilma did against segregation, persevere. My grandma knows a thing or two about this kind of perseverance. As a child, she endured the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl by relying upon her family for love and support. She later challenged herself to take care of her mentally ill brother for the rest of his life. And she saw her son, my dad, risk his money, time, and effort in pursuit of his goal of making films to educate people about Kansas history. Perseverance pays off, she said. You just gotta keep at it.